So for more, it's a pleasure to welcome to studio Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Jonathan Conricus, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies and former IDF International spokesperson, and Daniel Sheck, Director of Diplomacy at the Hostage and Missing Families Forum and former Israeli Ambassador to France. Gentlemen, thank you both so much. So Damascus is not happy with this trip. We just saw there Benjamin Netanyahu and the top brass thanking soldiers in that very crucial buffer zone. What do you make of what is going down there, the significance right now?
Well, for one, the assessment must have been that it's a safe place to be because Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Defense, Head of Shabak, and various Israeli generals all in one location. So obviously, apparently, the intel assessment was that the situation is under control and that it is 100% safe to be there. Otherwise, it would have been a very risky and foolish thing to have so many important people in one place. More to the matter, I think this is an attempt by Israel to indicate to the Syrian leadership that Israel is intending to stay in that buffer zone. This is one of those new positions that Israel took control over after the regime in Syria fell. And the message here is pretty clear. We're here, we're prepared to stay. If we need to stay for a really long time, then we will do so. And I think the demand here from the new Syrian regime is that there needs to be a security buffer zone in between the Israeli border, the actual Israeli border, 1974 ceasefire zone, and somewhere towards Damascus. Otherwise, the risk for Israel is too big. And I think what Israel is signaling is that we're going to hold on to this until the situation on the ground is really clear and safe for Israelis.
And Daniel, Ahmed al-Sharaa, a former jihadi, of course, 12 months ago was part of this rebel ousting of Bashar al-Assad. Now he's in a suit, he's in the White House, he's meeting with top leaders. His whole reputation, his global standing has changed dramatically in 12 months. The skepticism, though, remains on the Israeli side when it comes to security. What do you make of the meetings?
It's not necessarily because of his person. You know, he's on a fast track back to respectability on the international scene. But everyone understands that Syria is far from being a stable state, and that there are still many risks for his regime and elsewhere. There's so many factions that can suddenly erupt into some kind of conflict between communities. So I think it's probably a reasonably calculated thing that Israel is doing, maintaining Syrian forces at arm's length and keeping such a buffer zone. Of course, it's not something that can be, I think, that can eternally exist. And at some point, Israel will have to draw a real border there that it respects. But I think for now, everyone understands that the risk is real.
And talking about risks being real, as we turn our attention slightly, more Israeli airstrikes across the northern front. The IDF has today launched a wave of strikes on Hezbollah targets in 2 villages in southern Lebanon after issuing evacuation warnings. They're part of a series of strikes in the past 24 hours targeting terror infrastructure belonging to Hamas or Hezbollah. So, Jonathan Conricus, those terror threats persist. The IDF completing this wave of airstrikes against Hezbollah weapons depots in southern Lebanon. Your sense, is this one step closer to a broader escalation once again across that front?
It looks like mowing the lawn, and it looks like standard Israeli operations against Hezbollah attempts to violate the ceasefire agreement, to redeploy in the south, to refurbish or reestablish their presence in various, of course, as always, civilian houses in Lebanon. It all looks civilian, and what Israel struck appeared to be a civilian house, only that it was used by Hezbollah. But actually, the more interesting action, I think, took place when Israel struck the Ain el-Hilweh, so-called refugee camp, administered by, no surprise, UNRWA, and a fertile breeding ground for terrorists. And that was quite an unusual strike. And I would connect, the basis for that was imminent intel of an imminent attack that was being prepared from that by Hamas. ordered from Gaza, but prepared in Lebanon in order to attack Israel from the north. And that was quite an unusual strike. And I'd connect the bigger picture here with the efforts in Lebanon that are stalling quite a bit, where the Lebanese government, according to the agreement, is supposed to disarm Hezbollah. That isn't really happening. And Hezbollah, Naim Qassem said just a week ago, we're not going to disarm of our weapons. And if you think so, you're in for a surprise. That's a situation that is very dangerous. And what Israel is doing is actually taking steps in order to have everybody understand that we're not going to tolerate the situation. The Lebanese are complaining, condemning, but they're doing it at very low volume and low key. And I personally believe that they would be very happy if Israel did the heavy lifting and the dirty work for them, disarming Hezbollah and disarming Hamas and other rogue factions, because it appears as if they have run out of steam or political capacity to do so themselves.
But what is abundantly clear is that Hezbollah certainly is not disarming.
No doubt about that.
Juncture, no doubt at all. Gentlemen, stay with us. We'll put more of those dots together as you explain it. So, Daniel, when you hear exactly that, we know that there are congressional issues. This could all take time. But one of the issues that clearly stood out for everyone in this region is the issue of normalization. MBS says he wants to join the Abraham Accords, but the path to a Palestinian state needs to be made clear. How does that sit with you from a diplomatic perspective? It's not going to sit well with many Israelis at this juncture, quite clearly.
Tell me something we didn't know. It was from day one clear that that would be a precondition. The Netanyahu government spokesperson sometimes tried to, soften it. They'll be content with just a general statement on it. No, I don't think so. Since the Saudis were, in a sense, into the making of this agreement from day one. They didn't do it with Trump directly. They did it with Emmanuel Macron. They prepared most details of this plan. They will insist on the Palestinian issue, probably not on the actual creation of a Palestinian state, but something something that you can sink your teeth in more than just a general statement. But I'd like to follow up on something that Mr. Wegenheim just said and about the Congress. I think what stands out really is that Saudi Arabia, in the eyes of this administration, I'm saying this administration, Saudi Arabia is beginning to replace Israel as the prime ally in the region. It's clearly the prime morsel that Donald Trump is looking for economic and business reasons, things that Israel can't offer. So I'm not saying he's turning his back on Israel, but he's courting Saudi Arabia much more than he is courting Israel currently. But I insist on the fact that this is the administration, and it might not be the case in Congress, and it might not be the case in public opinion in the US. So I agree with him. It's not a done deal yet.
Jonathan, your thoughts on exactly that, the cost of normalization. Before October 7th, reports suggested that those deals were imminent between Jerusalem and Riyadh. Then, of course, we know what happened. It's more than 2 years now, and we heard the rhetoric there out of the White House. What does it mean for Israel? How important strategically would those normalization deals be right now?
So there's a lot to unpack here, and Mike's report was really compelling. I'd say the following. There's winners of this meeting. That's bin Salman himself. Great win for him. Gets a security deal with the US, gets global recognition, gets forgiven and washed clear of the Khashoggi event, at least at the presidential level, and that indicates the vector. And he delivers remarks in English for the first time on a global scale, and credit to him for all of those things. Losers probably would be Israel, sadly. It saddens me to say, but we're not getting anything in return for this happening. Not that Israel really had a say and not that Israel had leverage over it, but we told ourselves, and we were told by none other than the Prime Minister, that indeed that would be the arrangement and that is what would eventually happen. Security guarantees for the Saudis, which is what the Saudis wanted, and that would mean normalization with Israel and Abraham Accords. Sadly, that didn't happen. Now, F-35s is a concern, and Mike is spot on in terms of the qualitative military edge. I'm less concerned about F-35s in the hands of the Saudis. I am much more concerned about the fungible nature that with which the president looks at this asset, this mighty fifth-generation aircraft, and I'm very concerned that it may find itself sold to the Turks, for instance. Now, that would be a clear and blatant threat towards Israel. Saudi is one thing. I don't think that they have the same level of hostility and negative intentions towards Israel. Turkey definitely has. And I hope that this won't expand further. Nuclear power has been on the wish lists of the Saudis for a long, long time. 2 years ago, most people would scoff and, joke about the Saudis wanting nuclear research on their soil. I understand, based on a statement by the Secretary of Energy, that it's not going to be enrichment on Saudi soil, which is really the core matter. It's going to be about the provision of electricity, full stop. If there's any type of breach from that, any additional deviation from protocol, Saudis wanting enrichment on Saudi soil, that could mean a whole new chapter in the Middle East. Egypt, Turkey, and many other countries would be vying for the same things, and they would have a strong case in order to try to get it. So a lot has happened in the last few days. Just the scope of the delegation, more than 1,000 participants on the Saudi side, indicates what the ambassador just spoke about, the size and really the importance of the matter and how much is on the table, how much money, and what the Americans are interested in getting in return for this recognition.
And of course, another winner, Donald Trump.
And Donald Trump needs the normalization precisely in order to convince Congress, because that's one tool to convince Republicans and Democrats who are hesitant because they fear for the alliance with Israel to go forward with it.
Your thoughts right now? We have a minute left. Hamas being eliminated was supposed to be a goal of the war. Are you surprised at the strength that is showing right now in different parts of the region as we speak? Yeah,
they're not showing significant strength. It's, leftover capabilities, not really strong military capabilities. I don't see a certain strategy. It's local skirmishes at the tactical level. But every day that goes by and that international stabilization force isn't fielded, put on the ground with the clear directive and mandate, if we're talking in UN terms, Chapter 7, to use lethal force in order to implement the mandate, and in this case, the mandate will be to disarm Hamas. Every day that goes by and that doesn't happen is another day that Hamas will regain their capabilities, strengthen their hold over the civilian population, and make it more difficult to dismantle them once the time really comes.
Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserve, Jonathan Conricus and Daniel Sheck, thank you both so much for being here to update us and give your insights on all these developing stories. Thank you.